Hi, my name is Ryan Smith, and I'm a youth pastor at Coastline Community Church in Carlsbad, California. You know, I didn't even think about ministry really until high school. It was actually a Sunday morning. My mom took me to a church, what became our home church, but my mom wheeled me in about 15 minutes late in the middle of a youth service full of 200 students, and my mom's talking as loud as she can. And she's wheeling me in like, Ryan, you're just going to be so great, you know, they're just going to like you. And everyone in the room turns around, and here I am with like, my legs are in casts straight out in this wheelchair. And my mom's like touching my hair and pushing me in. Is the most embarrassing moment probably in anybody's life. And I just remember after the service, the youth pastor coming up to me and saying, you know, Ryan, we are having a band practice tomorrow. I heard you play guitar. Do you want to come join us? I'm like, I'm in a wheelchair. You know, I can't play guitar in a wheelchair. And he's like, yeah, you can. Come join us. And so from that time on, I got involved in the worship team. I got involved with other youth workers. I got mentors in my life, people that saw value in me and really came alongside of me during that tough time. Even though my parents were there, they were that great support to me. And so, high school really was that time where I began developing the relationships of what would turn into a lifelong journey with Jesus Christ. And my first week of college, I meet this girl that, to me, was just the most perfect woman on earth to me. And she has 40 people around her at all times. And she is this socialite, this high energy bubble. And I'm this guy on the grass playing my guitar. Over the course of that semester, we had classes together, and we pulled pranks on each other, and she would visit me at my dorm room, and I would go out with some of her friends. And then all of a sudden, December comes, and we go back home, and we go back to and you know what I just realized at that point, we both realized what our friendship had turned into. Really, it was we had become in love with each other in the sense that we started spending time together, we started going on walks together, started sharing our lives together, started talking about her family, which is completely different than mine, talking about all the different things that we love and all of our dreams and our hopes. And what I fell in love with was that my wife was called to youth ministry. And then a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, connected us with a pastor in Washington. It was my first full-time position. It's in a rural community about 90 miles north of Seattle. And it's this old logging town. It's the completely opposite place of Orange County. Just the most dynamic opposite you can think of. What we started doing was this community outreach thing where we were connecting with schools, tutoring and mentoring students. And what we became is a church for the community. And that was really the vision for our church. And so things were going great. You know, we had a smaller youth ministry, but really what we had was we had a great community connection. And so we went from 20 to like 50 to 60 and then 70, and then all of a sudden just took the wind out of our sails. Our senior pastor was asked to leave the church. There's some circumstances that were really unclear, but it was a really hard thing for our church, really hard for me because I was his first hired staff member. My wife was on staff. And the board, he was asked to leave, and even though there were things that had happened and things going on, we were in this place of we still love this place, we still love this community, we want to be a part of what's going on here. And we prayed, and God just really let us open up a door back in my home church. And almost the same week, I got a phone call from just a few people saying, were we interested in a full-time ministry position that had opened up in San Diego? Took over a ministry there that we had a youth pastor that actually planted a church in the same town, and so he took probably every driving high schooler and student with him. And we were just left with a few youth workers and about 30 students. We built a relational ministry, a ministry where students and leaders were connected through relationship. You know, we had relational disciplers that were commissioned as missionaries. What happened was essentially, we grew. It was amazing. We had community students coming to prayer nights. We had students coming to Christ and bringing their friends and them coming to Christ and sharing their faith. We had services starting on high school campuses. It just blew up. And we had 160 students out of this 30 students in 2 years, and we just were blowing up. This is an amazing thing that God was doing in our community. And the phone rang, and it was my senior pastor, my lead pastor. It was real unusual that he'd call me on a Sunday evening or after small groups, and he said, "Hey, Ryan, I really need you to come in tomorrow." And it was one of those moments where in ministry, just your heart begins to race. You start hearing it in your ears. You feel like there's just something not right about this. Something's not adding up. This does not feel normal. And so we we canceled the plans we had going on. Ashley had a doctor's appointment that she had canceled, and we came in, and we showed up, and it's just my senior pastor and a board member, and they were there to tell us that both my wife and I were on staff, and they were going to be, unfortunately, they had to let us go. And it was probably one of the toughest days of my life, because it was my home church. It was a place I grew up. I mean, people that knew me, it was my home. And for me and for Ashley, it was probably one of the worst days of our lives. We walked out of the office, escorted by a board member, and then we had to pack up our offices together in front of this board member. And boxes were already there in our offices, and 2.5 hours later, we were gone and off the campus. And I just remember hearing my wife cry in the other room, and I just remember hearing her sob that this is not fair, and how can this happen? And we love these students. What are the students going to think? What's going to happen? And 2 days later, we found out we were pregnant. And that's actually the appointment that my wife canceled, was the appointment to see if we were going to have a baby. And in that moment, 2 days later, when the aftermath of it all, and students are finding out, and our phones are ringing off the hook, and people are wondering why we left, and no one's giving any answers, you just ask yourself, what's going on, God? Why did you allow this to happen? Why did you allow us to grow so much and to do so many great things with students just for us to leave? My wife and I, we move out of our apartment. We move in with my family, which is tough if you've ever lived with your family. And then we had to move out, and then things had to happen. And then, we spend a night in a car, just with me and my pregnant wife with nothing. God, I'm wondering, God, what do you have in store? I remember we were driving down the freeway, just trying to figure things out, because that's the only time we really had, was just time in the car to talk. And, someone from the church was calling me. It was like 3 weeks later. Someone from the church was calling, and my wife, and I was like, I can't answer this, Ashley. And my wife takes the phone and she throws it out of the car. And we're on the freeway, and she throws hers too, and she's like, Ryan, we can't do this anymore. And so that's when we decided that we need to give a season to grieving, but then we need to allow God to move too. Well, we went into this period of time where I was working at Walmart, I was working at Chipotle, I was working all these little jobs, and then my life changed. My son was born. He was the reason why we got through the season that we did. He was the hope that we had. He was almost God's voice to us in some ways. That he was that hope. That voice of hope, that glimmer of, that there's a life on the other side of this tragedy. There's a life on the other side of what's going on. There's a life on the other side of this circumstance. I was in a management program at a restaurant, and I really just was looking for what was next, and God just put Coastline Community Church in my lap, a part-time position in a student ministry of 20 or 30 students, And so after a few weeks, our kids pastor leaves, and he, and our executive pastor leaves, and all of a sudden the church they come to me and say, Ryan, you've been doing this part-time. Why don't you come and help us do some more stuff full-time? And so I just moved. So a week ago, we moved into our first place after a year and a half, and my son can crawl on a floor that's in our home that's wide open, and he can, it's our place, it's our space. My stuff's not in storage anymore. It's stuff I haven't seen in 2 years. I can fit in again. I've lost 12 pounds, 15, 20 pounds since then. So it's just crazy to see how God has provided, because I'm in a better place than when I started.